Welcome to your daily dose of theological German. We are on installment number 5 on this new book that we started this week. And it's going to be a little bit longer today, but it's Friday, so you got to go away with a little extra for the weekend. How about that? So the sentence here today starts with this discourse marker, dabei, which really woodenly you could actually say thereby, but we probably would just say therefore in English. And so because it begins with that modifier, then the verb comes in second position, which is here, appears, and then your subject is going to follow. So if you want to just pick it up with the subject first in English, you're going to say the concept of textual coherence, therefore, appears as, and then here you'll notice in this adjective you've got the superlative morpheme in here, and so you're going to want to say as the most suitable, on the one hand, the literary method to characterize. And so what you actually have here is a zu construction. This to characterize is going to go with the verb up there, appears to be the best. And so you want to complete the thought, to be the best at what? The best or most suitable at what? The most suitable to characterize the literary procedure, which is being the procedure that he has been describing. And the next clause here says, without prejudice for a particular literature, either interbiblical or Jewish, and these are kind of given, I think, here as examples. You'll notice there's no verb in that clause, so it's actually not really right to call it a clause. It's sort of an offset phrase. But this noun here, prejudice, is it's got a verbal idea built into it, and so that's kind of the way the construction that is formed that way, without prejudice for a particular set of literature. This next clause also doesn't really have a main verb. What you have instead is at the end down here is another zu construction. And so the verb here is actually hinweisen, and you have the zu comes in between because it's a separable verb. And so this is a zu construction which actually goes back with the previous zu construction and is all part of the construction with this verb appears to be the most suitable to characterize, etc., without prejudice, and it's also the most suitable to point to. So that's what's going on with the verb, the zu construction in this clause. And so let's just go ahead and try to translate that clause, okay? And so it says here, and simultaneously to point to, and that's, you have this auf, goes with that verb, to point to the context and therewith the, that's an archaic term to say in English, therewith. I mean, that is an English word, but it's quite wooden, so you could just say and with it, the context and with it, the wider or expanded field of reference. This is kind of an interesting word because it's a compound word, and so field there, feld. But Bezug, if you look that up, I mean, it can mean a case, a covering for like a pillowcase is often used to refer to. There's a wide range of usage, but one of the usages is reference. And so if you want to make reference to something, you can use a verbal construction with Bezug as the object. And so that's kind of the sense here, I think, the field of reference that is being pointed to. And so what is being said here, this Zug-like, is complementing this other feature up here. On the one hand, einerseits. So on the one hand, it's the most suitable concept to characterize the literary method without prejudicing one particular set of texts, and simultaneously to point to the wider context and the wider field of reference for a given text. And so I think what this author is getting at is the idea that he wants a method of textual analysis that is intertextual on some level, but is able to interact with a wider field of reference than just specific texts that could be being used in some way. And so he's using this concept of textual coherence to kind of get at what's the wider field of reference that has to be in view in order for this text to make the sense that it does. And so that wider field of reference will undoubtedly include things like interbiblical allusions, etc., or other Jewish literature, But in the case of the book of Proverbs, as he said in a previous episode, it's also going to include just a wider world of things like from Egyptian texts and stuff like that. And so if you recall in a previous episode, he also talked about literacy being kind of the basis for this. And so that's what he's getting at. What other texts and what do I have to be literate in order for this text to be coherent? And I think that's the question he's getting at. And so it's not just that I have to know other specific texts, a specific body of literature. I have to have a wider literacy than that, which gets at the context and the wider field of reference that is being pointed to in the texts of Proverbs that this author is going to analyze. So that's my long explanation to give you some context for what these kind of sentences might be referring to and communicating. And this has turned into a very long episode, but just real quick, we'll do the last clause here, which kind of sums up all the point that he's just made. In this last sentence, you have this kind of construction, geht So gehen is a verb that means to go, but when it's used with different prepositions, it can kind of create all kinds of different nuances. And so if you look in your dictionary, you should find a long list of different prepositions that it occurs with and what kind of nuances it takes. When you see gehen you're looking at an idea of like it concerns or like it's about, something like that, right? So here I'm going to say it doesn't concern. It does not concern only the quotation or the allusion as such. Rather, and this is picking up this here is picking up again that same verb gehen. So rather it concerns the context and the reference between text units or something like that. So that kind of basically elaborates on what I sort of explained in reference to the previous part of the sentence. So I hope that all makes sense and you have good context for this. And we've got 10 more episodes on this text. And so we'll start to see how this method, this intertextual kind of method of textual coherence that this author wants to use about Proverbs is going to all come together.